Hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. I had to go all the way to Atlanta this week, but it's nice and warm down there, and we're excited to be hanging out with a fellow disc provider. So, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Mount Kilimanjaro. We're going to talk about a lot of fun stuff. But I want to ask this question to start with. When you wake up, like let's use this morning. Everyone woke up hopefully this morning. When you woke up this morning, what was like on your mind? Where were you? Was it all about getting that first cup of coffee, or were you looking for ways to elevate your perspective and try and tackle the day in a different way? And I'm honored to be hanging out with Pam Leinmiller. How are you today?
I am awesome today. I'm better now that I'm talking to you, Dave.
Oh my gosh. And it starts. I love it. We just got done in a conference together. So we caught up and now we're going to catch up even more. You are president of Vertical Vision Incorporated. So fill us in on what in the world's going on at Vertical Vision.
All things in the world are going on at Vertical Vision. I'm excited to be running my own company where I get to decide the clients that I work with and the things that I do. And I just have a passion for making an impact in whatever way I can. And for me, that has really grown into, started out in communications training and has really grown into helping people be the best they can be and overcome, those negative thoughts in their brain that sabotage them. To be able to be the best leader, salesperson, team member, whatever their role might be. That's my goal, to help them elevate.
That's awesome. Well, none of us have any problems with negative thoughts. I mean, so that we won't even touch on that today. Oh my gosh, if I think about that, that's crazy. That and communication, there's so much here. So thank you again for hanging out with us today.
Yeah.
The odd thing is that we both are super high I and super high D on the disc. So that basically means that we're results oriented, but we're also very people, we'll call them, right? So we can
That's true.
we can sit here all afternoon and talk and forget where we're at. So I do have kind of an agenda, but if I get way off, you know what, listener, it's my fault. If we go off in a good way, it's my fault. If we go off in a bad way, then it's Pam's fault. So I just want you guys to
I see how this is going to
Oh,
go.
absolutely, for sure. So we're gonna line that up right away. So yeah, so I want to talk right out of the gate about somebody that is waking up and they're just kind of existing. They wake up, they grab their coffee, they eat their bowl of Cheerios, they catch the bus, the van, whatever, they drive to work. It's like a 50 week a year type of existence. And not that it's good or bad, right or wrong, Pam, but I'm just curious, what do you help if somebody's listening and that's them and they want to kind of see that from a different perspective? What perspective can you share with them on that?
I guess I had to go back because I had to go through that, Dave. I've remade myself several times. Well, you probably don't know, actually. I've remade myself several times over my life. And each time when I was at a kind of a crossroads where you got to be like, okay, I'm ready to change direction, and you're trying to figure out what that's going to be. It really helps to go back to when you were younger and maybe you didn't have all the pressures that you have right now. As an adult, adulting is hard,
Sure.
right? So maybe you didn't have all those pressures. And what were the things that you gravitated towards? Was it physically oriented? Was it, mentally? Were you challenging yourself? Did you enjoy serving people? Like, kind of have that kind of evaluation.
Sure.
And
Okay.
I think that helps people go into investigating a direction where they might be more happy and wake up with a little bit more exuberance, a little bit more of a jump in their step, and
Gotcha.
if they can go back to where they used to be.
Well, my next book I'm working on, Pam, is about business blind spots. So we
Ah,
talk about blind spots, and I think that there might be people listening that they don't know some of what you just said. So is that where do you encourage people to then find a coach, find a mentor, find somebody that can give an outside perspective? because I feel like an outside perspective is way different sometimes than what we're seeing on a day to day. So I'm just curious on that, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think a lot of leaders or people that are doing well in their life think they don't need an outside perspective, because if we're looking from the outside in, they look like they're doing great and, putting on the happy face. But the reality is, I mean, you and I work with people all the time, but even we need an outside perspective and somebody to come and give us that other viewpoint, because all of us have blind spots.
Right.
And somebody who's working through, somebody looking from the outside, it might be so obvious to them, that person that's getting up without really any direction, just going through the motion. It might be really obvious from somebody to the outside where their gifts are and where their talents are, that if they would just maybe make a slight adjustment,
Yeah.
they'd be a lot happier. But they can't see it because they're down in it, trying to make it happen every day.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really great point. I think that people struggle with coaches because they feel like it's going to be this fundamental, huge 180-degree change in their life, right? And I think about Michael Jordan, or I think about Tiger Woods, two of the best athletes in my world ever. And I think about, I'm guessing, the coaches that they surround themselves with, they're just doing little minor course corrections. It's a little degree here, it's a little degree there, but the end result is so phenomenal. And so I'm just curious, if when you talk to somebody about that, are you more into the little course corrections, whether it's in communication or the negative thoughts? Is that kind of how you start that out?
Well, I have really two angles on that, Dave. The first one is, I think a lot of people look at coaching that haven't done it. They think of counseling.
Sure. Yeah.
And they think of it in a negative way, like something's wrong with me, so
Sure.
I need to get some help.
Yeah.
Coaching is really not that way at all. It's like, here's where you are, and you want to go to the next level.
Sure.
It's more of a moving up rather than fixing something that's wrong. But incremental changes are really important. And I think one of the biggest roles a coach can make is in the accountability department. If I know that I'm going to be accountable, you've heard it said that you really do and achieve what gets measured.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
that's so true. And the role of a coach can be a lot like that. When you're working to elevate yourself and improve, that coach can keep you accountable on those decisions that you've made. But that analogy for me goes to mountain climbing, which I know we'll talk about. You mentioned Kilimanjaro, but
Yeah.
my mantra when I'm mountain climbing is, because it gets hard, and when you get above the tree line and there's not a lot of oxygen, and it's harder. And when you're really trying to break through as a leader or in your business, that's when it's hard. You really have to come from inside, what's inside of you, but you can still just put one foot in front of the other. And that's all you can do at any
Sure.
given time,
Yeah.
one step at a time. And that's really how you have to make changes. You can't just wholesale change your life and
Sure.
how you act or whatever it is you're trying to change. So that's the key.
Yeah.
Those incremental changes, one step at a time, just put one foot in front of the other.
Well, and I think that's where I know for myself, Pam, I get messed up on that. I'm a black and white thinker. I tend to think in black and white. It's one way or the other, right? So if I'm going to jump into something like mountain climbing, like you were talking about, I mean, this is why I don't know if I could ever do it, because I want instant results. I don't want to train. I just want to do, there's a mountain, I guess you can call it that, in San Diego, the tallest spot in San Diego County. It's a mile and a half up, and it's, it takes about 30 or 40 minutes to get to the top. And at first, when I would walk, I would have to really focus on things. But then as you start to do it, it gets easier, right? But I don't much higher than that. And I'd be like, I don't know about this. I mean, so how did a high D person like you, how did that become so a passion for you?
by accident.
Good. Well, good. Now I don't feel
If
so
I'm
bad. Good.
honest, you know how so many things that we end up with in our lives started out by accident. A lot of
Sure.
people that you've heard, I mean, they're not even working in the field that they studied in college, or if they went to trade school, you know, whatever it was that they really focused on, maybe they're not even doing that now. For me, it was just by getting invited by a friend of mine, who had moved from here in Atlanta. And we used to take hikes on the Chattahoochee. For people who are familiar with Atlanta, instead of meeting for coffee, we go for a hike, which
Okay.
I really highly recommend for
Sure.
those of you that are listening that need to either have a conversation with somebody you're working with or brainstorm an idea. Getting out in nature and getting active physically often frees you up from being kind of in the walls of your office or your
Okay.
home or wherever it is you work. So we used to go out hiking. Well, she moved outside of San Francisco,
Okay.
and I was out there working and spent some extra time with her. She was telling me about this great trip she took on Mount Shasta. And I said, next time you're going on some great adventure, call me. I want to go.
Yeah.
Because it sounded like so much fun. And I am very physically oriented. I love to challenge myself at the gym or running or whatever that might be.
Sure.
And so she did. She called me, and her challenge was the thing that she wanted to do was Mount Whitney, which is the highest peak in the lower 48 states, and it's out in California.
Okay.
And so that's what we did. That was my very first mountain, was the highest peak in the lower 48 states. And we had to be roped in for the last 500 feet up the backside of the mountain. Did I know all of that when I said, yes, count me in?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Sure.
But I was up to the challenge. You know, I thought, well, okay, if anybody can do it, I mean, I can do it. I'm going to train for this, and little by little. So that's the key. You have to train for it. And then my husband and I have just kind of kept climbing. We've done really basically one a year since that was in 2016.
Okay.
And we've basically done one a year. We didn't do one during COVID because where we were going to go was closed down, but we did two the year after last year. So kept going.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So how long did it, what was the one in the lower 48?
Yeah, it was Mount Whitney, and we did the Mountaineers route, which is it was a 3-day trek. Yeah. So essentially
So you move your way up, you know, you start at wherever, and then you slowly move your way up, or fast, however you are.
Yeah.
What does that teach you about leadership? How does that tie into success? Because I'm just curious how you're marrying those thoughts together.
Well, I think that there's a lot of different lessons in there, right? Because you have to, in one whole event, you are both a leader and a follower, and you have to do both. I mean, we hired private guides, and then they would split us up. And so for the roping in up the backside of the mountain, we were in groups of 3, and then that was my first revelation. The night before we summited, we got there and we're camping, and the guides told us, well, we're putting you in groups of 3. They put 2 strong people, and then the 2 weakest people, they split them up.
Okay.
And that was my first realization, that if one of us in our group didn't make it, then none of us would out of the 3, in our group.
Sure.
So I was really determined at that point to be like the best leader and teammate. I was not the weakest link. She was in between my husband and I, and we were determined to be the best combination of leaders and team members for her. And we each had a guide, and so it's an interesting dynamic, and you intuitively have to know when you need to step out and be saying, you can, be that encourager and that leader that's doing it, showing by example. And then when you have to back up and be the teammate that's, a part of the group. There's some interesting dynamics there, but. So
that's a really good question or point that you brought up. I mean, if that would be considered a team, in an office where you have some strong people and some weak people, your team tends to be only as good as your weakest person. Now, I've heard that over and over, but the fear is, in the past, I would say that, well, doesn't the weakest link just get replaced? So, I feel like it's a shift now in business where rather than replace the weakest link, we're going to train, we're going to retrain, we're going to recalibrate, we're going to invest time and energy in that weakest link.
Right.
If you would have just been like, hey, you're out of here, you guys couldn't have did it. Would you, well, first of all, would you have been able to do it without that individual?
Well, we were starting with that individual, so if we didn't make it, we were all going to have to come back down off the back of the
Gotcha.
mountain because we were roped together.
Okay, gotcha.
So
So
there
that's
wasn't an
really,
option.
oh, okay. So that's not an option then, right? So
Nope.
that's where I think us as business owners and entrepreneurs, we really need to kind of, I think about it from the hiring perspective is, my question always is, would you want this person in your foxhole with you?
Yeah.
You're talking about, would you want this person tied
Roped
to
in.
you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a really real life experience that, if they're negative or if they're not trained properly, if whatever, if there's something there that is not allowing them to move forward, they're going to not only damage it for themselves, but quite frankly, they're ruining for the rest of the team.
Right.
And that would be painful, I would guess.
That's a really important distinguishing point, Dave, because in this situation, she wanted to summit. She was ready to do what it took to overcome her shortcomings and work with the team and let us help her. So I think that's a big, when you're working in the business environment, if that person doesn't want to, then maybe it is better just to cut them loose. But if they want to and they're open to changing and working on whatever it is they need to work on, that's a whole different person. Because back to the name of your podcast, Positive Polarity, they have the attitude and they want to put in the time and the work or the development, whatever it is. And I think that's a really key distinguishing factor.
Well, if she would have said, I can't do this, then it's the next point, the next like sentence out of her mouth is like critical. I can't do this. I want to do this, or I don't want to do this and I'm not going to do it. Right. So I don't think that we will always have a team full of everybody showing up early, staying late, super excited. They're all like smiles. Life is awesome. I don't think we're expecting that. I think it's like when you're in the midst of it, it's like, okay, I can't do this right now. I want to do it. So what's the next step? I mean, she had a really positive attitude, it sounded like in that case, correct?
Yes, she did. And she made it and it was great. And you know what? That is almost a better feeling than me summiting myself, is to know that we were able to help her summit.
Yeah.
And it's a really great feeling when you get to act as a leader in that situation and enable somebody else to achieve something they want to achieve.
Yeah.
It's really a great feeling.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the same skills or the same training that got you to Mount McKinley in 3 days, was that the same training that got you to Kilimanjaro in 9 days? Or is there a completely different set of rules and training and things that have to happen there?
Well, yeah, it was Mount Whitney in California.
Yeah.
McKinley somewhere else.
Mount Whitney. Sorry. Why did I say McKinley? Sorry. I write it down. There's so many mountains that you've climbed. I mean, come on, Pam.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter anymore.
I don't want somebody listening to say, hold on, that wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. There'll be some. Don't email me, email Pam. Okay, please.
Well, it was on steroids actually for Kilimanjaro, because the height on Mount Whitney was just over 15,000 feet, but Kilimanjaro was 19,341 to be exact. So I'm not going to forget that number.
Yeah, exactly, for sure.
And you think of like the 14ers you hear about here in the States in Colorado, it's almost a mile higher. So when you think about, and my husband has done this a lot as we're taking off on an airplane, you can look on your monitor and see the altitude of the plane and how many degrees it is and all that. It is a pretty long time before you get to 19,341 feet.
Right.
And it's always around like 6 degrees or so. That's exactly what it was, with wind, and it was cold, like we had ski clothes on. But the training, it was a lot the same. And I will say a lot of it is mindset. A lot of it is you have to be physically ready, but you can get yourself physically ready. It's a lot of the mindset of I'm going to work through whatever obstacle
Right.
presents itself, because there will be obstacles. You just know, you don't know what they're going to be,
Right.
but you know you're going to have challenges.
Well, and I think that's the same way we approach business. Healthy people approach business. There's going to be a setback today. There could be a challenge today. There's going to be something that I'm going to have to deal with. Am I going to have the correct mindset? And you do a ton of work in EQ and emotional intelligence. And, that's the cool part about it. When you and I are out training on EQ, it's like, boy, that they don't even that self-awareness they start with, they don't even know that they're negative. They don't even know that they're starting at a bad spot. And so, I mean, how much of your training to get to Kilimanjaro was actually mindset training? Was there a ton of making sure that your head was in the right spot all through that training?
Yeah. And I think, again, the accountability piece, like there were 10 of us on that trek. 8 of us made it to the summit.
Okay.
Somebody didn't make it past the second day, but anyway, the rest of us were kind of holding each other accountable and supporting each other, like I was talking about with Mount Whitney.
Yeah.
And it happens that way. You know that you might be doing great when somebody else is struggling, and you can come alongside them. Sure. And help them, and then vice versa. When you might be struggling, they can come alongside you, and you work together that way. So it's yeah. But I do a lot of mindset work anyway. I've just realized it's a process, Dave, and I know you realize this, and I think I'm always going to be working on it, because it's in that the more you know, the more you realize you don't know category.
Sure. Yeah.
And the more you realize about yourself and are able to overcome certain things, the more you realize there's another part. You can always improve. I work with a lot of technical leaders. That's my background in technical, and I think that the facts of the case, they're usually really good about the concrete things that happen in their job. Yeah. But the mental piece of it, a lot of times, like you were talking about, that self-awareness piece, it's a revelation and a game changer for them to understand some about themselves. And then they get to work on that. And it's really fun. You've experienced it, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm shocked at how few people have actually invested the time or the energy to take an EQ assessment, and understand more about their emotions. And I love the visual of the clear glass to the red glass, or the foggy glass, whatever. And I love doing a live training where you have 3 different glasses there, and you put a little food coloring in that one, and it turns that clear to red. And it's like, what in your life turns you from clear to red? And some people just had clear to red on the way. Somebody cut them off the car. Right. There's something like that. They didn't hold the elevator for them. And all these things that just happen, we have a choice right when that door closes to either be like, oh, crap, I guess I'm getting the next one. Or, oh my gosh, I'm going to go find that person, or, take it out in some negative way. So does EQ really, do you work a lot with your leaders on their emotional intelligence?
Yeah, for me, the analogy that I like to use, again, with kind of the mountain idea, is getting that above the clouds clarity. Okay. And all of the assessment work, kind of the how of what we do, so to speak, you trying to give people information and then help them act on that or work on that. Sure. And that EQ piece, the clouds kind of serve as that stuff you have to work through. Here you are here, and you've got these clouds between you and, man, just the ability to see everything for forever. You could see the sun setting way across on the other side from, if you're up in an airplane. In my situation, climbing mountains and you get above the clouds. Sure. That's when I first saw it. And it's just such an analogy for me that that's how you can work through with your EQ when you work on your self-awareness and your social awareness, and you get that clarity about what's going on in your life and how you're impacting others and how you're feeling. It's just above the clouds clarity.
Sure.
That's what I call it.
Well, and so when we do the little mountain here that takes us, a tenth of what you're involved in, just to get a few times close. Well, it's close to the ocean and there's the marine layer.
Yeah.
And so you start out and you can't see the top, which I think is also pretty symbolic in our business. We really can't see what the end looks like. It's rare for us to understand what the end is going to look like. Quite frankly, if we did, I know for the days that I drive by the mountain and I look and I go, my gosh, I climbed that. And it's kind of in my head, it's like, yes, I did. But then it's like, dude, what are you nuts? It's like there's that little thing speaking in my head, that negative head trash. And I'm just like, my gosh, get out of here. Yeah, I do it and it's fun and I enjoy it. But I think if we always saw the end, we would probably be so intimidated sometimes. I don't know. Could you see the top of Kilimanjaro from where you were at the bottom?
We could not see the top for the first few days because we took the northern circuit route, which we essentially walked about 3/4 of the way around the mountain while going up each day to let our bodies acclimate to the extreme altitude. And that ensures your success more than anything else. You can do it in a shorter amount of time, but your body really takes a beating doing that. And our goals were not to do it as fast as we could. We wanted to do it. We wanted to achieve getting to the summit. And there's nothing like, I've got a picture, there's nothing like being able to see the sun rising from above the clouds.
Wow.
So the sun is rising below you. You're that far above the clouds that you see it rising above the clouds from up on the edge of the Kilimanjaro crater. It's amazing. I still remember. Yeah.
Well, and like you said, it's, what, if we do it too fast, that's, I think, another really solid piece. You and I both do triathlons, and I always laugh because my strength is the swim, and that's like the most people's weakness, right? So the first part of the triathlon is the swim, and you watch all these people and they're stretching and they're acting like they are just Olympics, they're Olympians, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm intimidated because I'm looking around. I'm like, where's all their body fat? It's all gone, right? And so I'm like, man, I think I got all their body fat. So I let them go ahead because that's just how I am. I'm like, I'm not going to worry about, my whole goal is to finish my whole, that's what that I focus on.
Yeah.
And for the smaller triathlons, there, you swim out to a buoy and then you usually make like a rectangle, right? And it's funny because, boy, I tell you what, that first buoy, there's all these guys with zero body fat, these women that you thought were going to just smoke it. They're all hanging on, hyperventilating. They did not plan this out properly. And I think that happens a lot to us in business. And then we flare out so quick because we're on that buoy. I mean, what do you do at that point? So I'm assuming your longer way around Kilimanjaro was really the smart way to go. It may not, like you said, have been the fastest way, but it ensured success, which at the end of the day is really what our company needs, is the success rather than the speed. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, have you ever had anybody call you and say, yeah, I need one of those assessments, just let me take that and send it to me. And then, they're either not going to do anything with it. They're just taking it to act like they're, starting off, or they might do a few things, but then they get stuck on the buoy because they aren't going to be accountable themselves. And they just don't keep going. But to the earlier point of that one step at a time and changing one thing at a time, moving in the right direction, but just working on like the most egregious thing at that moment. What's happening in your life or your business that you need to work on the most? And it's different for everyone. There's not a formula.
Yeah. It's got to be really hard to be a doctor at an ER, or one of those whatever where you walk in and there's something really wrong with you, and then you have to ask all these other questions. I can't even concentrate if my elbow's in pain or whatever, and they're asking me about my legs or my hips. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is the problem right here. So I totally can see where if we don't deal with the problem, that's how, like, when I coach, I sit down and say, what's changed since the last time we met? What
Good
has
question.
changed? Because if we need to deal with that right here and now, I don't want to make an assumption that nothing's changed. And I sure don't want to start talking about their P&L if they just lost their, best sales professional. So,
Yeah, no
that's
kidding.
that's where I think it's really helpful to do that. Did you guys on your 9 days, did you know it was going to take you 9 days to get up there?
We did.
Okay.
We did. We knew it had time, but we didn't know a lot else other than that.
Yeah.
The our main guide kind of told us things as we needed to know
As
them,
little as possible, right?
which is, and finally it was like on day 6, because they're
Yeah.
checking your oxygen absorption every night. I mean, it's serious. You're up
Sure.
at
Yeah.
elevation for
Yeah.
days. And he finally told us, because we were summiting the night of day 7. I mean,
Okay.
we hiked overnight to get there at sunrise the morning of day 8.
Sure. Wow.
But the night of day 6, when he took, after dinner, he's doing everybody's oxygen absorption, making sure everybody's still doing okay, monitoring us. And he said, I think you're going to make it.
Wow.
We're like, what? After 6 days, you would have told us
Yeah.
we weren't going to make it. But I think he probably knew that all along, but he didn't want us to get too overconfident or get cocky. And just really that taking one step at a time, and he kind of forced that on us as our guide or our coach. I mean, he knew better than we did. So I think that's a good leader.
Yeah, for sure.
They know better than you do, and they can help you, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's what I think so cool about blind spots is, as a leader, my goal is to help the team identify and understand their blind spots, because they don't know what they don't know. So again, if you would have been going too fast or not fast enough, your leader, his goal, her goal is to be able to say, hey, here's the pace that we set. We need to kick in a little bit, or we need to calm it down a little bit. And I know high D, I'd be like, I start out on the little thing that we do here, and I start out and I'm like, man, nothing's wrong. This is good. I'm not even like out of breath. And man, I tell you what, within 4 minutes, I'm just like, oh, do I really, I'm like counting the cost, like right there, 4 minutes in, do I really want to do this? And I'm like, absolutely, I want to do it, so I think
4 minutes in, I love it.
Yeah, having those check-in points for your business. What do those look like? Have you identified like any benchmarks along the way? Are you looking at sales? Are you looking at team health? Are you looking at customer experience? Or quite frankly, are you looking at all of them when you're in that spot?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the customer, the client that I'm working with, and what their situation is, and whether it's a team or an individual, and whether it's cross-departmental or we're working in a vertical team. And again, there's not any right answer. I kind of develop what needs to happen with the people that are hiring me in the beginning to figure out what are the outcomes we're looking for, and how are we going to structure this so that we're all have a buy-in at the very beginning on, how this is all going to unfold. So
Gotcha.
That's, it's a partnership. I think that's part of the important thing. It's not like you or I are selling something. I mean, we want to help our clients meet their goals, not some goals that we set for them.
Right.
But what is it that they want to achieve, and where are their challenges that they want to have help overcoming? And then we just figure out how we can best help them do that.
That's always an awkward meeting where I say, so what do you want to accomplish? And they're like, I don't know. What do you want me to accomplish? And I'm like, well, this isn't about me. This is about you. And then you're forcing them to like verbalize what, there's things in their brain right now, Pam, that they've been thinking about. It's just that we got to get that verbalization so that they're actually able to articulate it. Then I can write it down, and then they can write it down, and then we have something to start working towards. So
I really think, Dave, that's why a lot of people don't want to deal with assessments, or especially emotional intelligence.
yeah,
Sometimes they think if I don't know, then I don't have to deal
Yeah.
with this or
Yeah.
act on the information.
Yeah.
If I just don't engage.
Sure. Yep.
And that's not, they're going to stay where they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not going to help. Self-development, that positive professional and personal development is just
Right.
not going to happen. Let's not leave out the personal side of this, because I think DISC, understanding behavior styles, actually saved my marriage, which is now, I've been married 37 years. And, I say it in front of my husband, but I didn't realize he had an opinion for the first 5 years. It wasn't good.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I talked to him over the weekend, and he said,
That's right.
yes.
You
He
met
told,
him.
yeah,
He's a
he
nice
said,
guy.
yeah, he says he does have an opinion. So he said,
He does.
yeah, I'm thankful for that. Well, and I think DISC is such a, it's so weird because you can have a free version online. It's probably 3 or 4 pages. And you and I are involved with TTI, which is an awesome assessment company. And, it's brutal. I'm helping a group right now, and they get 60 pages about themselves, right? It's like, oh my gosh. And it's actually interesting because some of the EQ on some of the team was a little bit lower, and the leader's like, well, maybe we should take that out of the assessment until they're able to, get their feet underneath them.
Handle
So
that.
there's so much power in understanding yourself.
Right.
Your communication work that you do, DISC is such an important part of it. And I just think of it like speaking 2 different languages. You and I just click because our personalities are the same. If they were reversed and you were very analytical, or you were very, specific on all these particular details, I would, I'd struggle because I probably said 4 things since I started that aren't even accurate. And you don't care because you're in the same boat, but it's just,
I had
how does that work?
enough of an analytical to correct you on that.
Yeah, you did. So yeah, exactly. No, absolutely. But how do you use DISC in the communication side? How do you do that on your end?
Well, it's really interesting because before I got certified, I was doing communications training, Dave, and I would intuitively adjust how I was dealing with people based on how they were with me. So it was a little bit intuitive for me. Like that's, I guess, one of my gifts is connecting with people and being able to realize that. But then once I got certified in DISC and could get the facts behind the case, then it justifies what's happening. And then you can help other people understand how to adjust the way that they're listening to someone, asking questions, interacting with them. Are you standing too close or too far away? All of those things, those behavior things that we do, the DISC profiling helps you to just connect better and faster. And as salespeople, we're trying to get to trust as fast as we can so that we can actually partner with the person that we're working with to sell them or whatever it is we're doing. But if they don't trust you or like you, they're not going to buy from you. And if you're that high pressure salesperson or that over the top people person, which a lot of salespeople are, they just overwhelm the client, and they're not going to get it anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, especially if they're not like you, right? If they're, it's funny because there's training out there that shows, video of actual buyers, and the buyer says, on one hand, if you're not excited about your product, why would I get excited about it? Okay. So now I have to know if that buyer wants me to be excited, because if, I'm that way. I'm a high I love excitement. So if I'm buying something and they're like, man, that's really cool, I think I'm going to get that, right? They pull that move on me, I'm sold. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, right? But if you flip it around and somebody says, if you're trying to use emotion on me to sell me something, I'm not going to buy because my wall goes up immediately.
That's right.
So now here's a tool of emotion that 50% of the time I'm going to get it right, and the 50% of the time I'm going to get it wrong. based on those two buying personas. So I think that that's really powerful. I try and help my salespeople that I'm training to understand and see right in front of you. They're going to tell you how they want you to sell to them. You know, you and I are both Sandler trained. So, it's one of those things that it's like,
That's
man, I just love using Sandler and
Sandler
Disc together.
submarine.
Yes, exactly. Those two together are awesome. So,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, there's so much here. We could then, because high people, we could just sit and talk for hours. So, I got two questions, and then I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
What would Pam Leinmiller's tip of the week be for anyone listening right now?
I think my tip of the week, and I try to do this with myself, is think about what is holding me back right now. What is it? And it's different weeks or different days even.
Yeah.
And then I try to figure out how to overcome that, eliminate that, hire it out.
Exactly.
Whatever
Right.
might need to happen. If I'm bogged down in book work, well, let's hire that out, for example.
Right.
If you have better things that you could be doing with your time for your business or your job, if there's some things you're getting down in the dumps about that just aren't your gifting and you're not good at them, like figure out a different way to have that happen. Or maybe some of the things that are holding you back don't even need to be done.
Yeah.
And you really look at it.
Right.
You know what I mean? We put
Yeah,
stuff
absolutely.
on the list and we let this big long list overwhelm us. And then we don't even need to do the bottom half of the list. We just
Yeah.
put it on there because those would be nice to have, but
Yeah.
they're not needed.
That's awesome.
So I try to figure out what's holding you back. And sometimes, like I mentioned in the beginning, I'm all about that mindset and that mental attitude. Sometimes it's right up here.
Right.
Like you're just down on yourself about something, or
Yeah.
you don't think you can do it.
Yeah.
You've got to work on that. Realize you're talking to yourself that way and change how you're talking to yourself.
That's
Easier
great.
said than done, but
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, and I think that's where it's so helpful to have somebody come alongside you, whether it's a coach, a
Yeah.
mentor, significant other,
true.
whatever, team member, somebody that you trust to be able to say, hey, I feel like you're off a little bit today, because we don't always see it. And I know that when my wife tells me I'm off today, I always want to immediately blame her and say, well, you think I'm bad, you're way worse, right? So I'm learning through my self-awareness to be able to look at that and go, okay, sit with it for a minute, digest it before you react and try and, make it about
Right.
somebody else. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Sure,
So
thanks,
if we, what's one thing that most people listening wouldn't know about you that you feel comfortable sharing?
Thing people don't know about me that I would feel comfortable sharing. There could be a lot of things. Well, that I feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's the key, right? Yeah, yeah.
Are you going to be editing this so you take
Sure, we're going to
all the
edit the crap
silence
out
in
of
the
it. Yeah,
middle
yeah, exactly.
of me
No,
answering
most
this
people
question?
most people are thinking the exact same thing. What would I be saying? So
I know. What would I be saying? Well, I don't feel like I act my age. I don't know if
okay,
that's a good thing or not, but I don't think you have to act your age.
cool.
That's kind of what I want to tell people. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we get ourselves in a box and you're like, oh, I should. And
Yeah.
you've heard about shoulding all over yourself. And I've stopped doing that. Like if I'm motivated by something and I want to do it, I'm going after it.
Yeah.
I'm at an age where a lot of people are thinking about slowing down and, planning for retiring and all that.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just getting started.
There you
Like
go.
I'm in it and I'm loving it. But I think that's happening in our society too, because we are living longer. And, like I said, I've remade myself multiple times. And this is the most fun makeover I've had with Vertical Vision. And
Yeah.
being able to, it's really satisfying to me to impact other people's lives in a really tangible, positive way.
Well,
So,
Pam, I gotta say, you're only in your 30s, okay? So I don't
That's
know
right.
why you're saying all this like you're not.
Wow.
So cool. Well, and for some of us, for the people listening, I just, I try and say every week, rather than just jump into your next podcast, rather than just, put it down and not walk away with anything. We talked about some really powerful stuff here. And so I just want people to be able to really sit with it. There's so much strength and power here, whether we're talking about communication, whether we're talking about emotional intelligence, whether we're talking about negative thoughts. I mean, there's just so much here. So again, rather than just jump onto your next piece, I know the last thing that entrepreneurs want to do is sit and do nothing. So I get that. I was raised, don't just stand there, do something.
That's right.
But as I'm getting older, I'm like, don't just do something, stand there. And it's really kind of a unique vision that once you do that. So I just want to encourage, if this spoke to you, if there are people, Pam, that want to learn more about you, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, they can go to my website, Pam Leinmiller, LeinMiller.com, and check me out. I've got a contact page there. I live chat with people. If you chat with me, it comes up on my cell phone. If I'm available, I'll chat with you. And I love to do that. So I'm not a bot. I am not a bot. Really, it's really me. I don't have a bot.
Unless you're halfway up Kilimanjaro, then it's going to go.
Well, I do disconnect, but yeah. I want to encourage your audience, like you said, Dave,
that's awesome.
And get out in nature. Go take a walk, go take a hike in a positive way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I want to leave them with. Go take a hike in a
Cool.
good way.
Well,
Think about what you heard today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to break my rule and ask one more question. Do you have any mountains that you're planning? What's your next feat?
Yeah, well, we would love to go down to Machu Picchu. We haven't done that, and because things were all shut down, and we've done some pretty fun peaks. Mount Washington's the windiest one, and it's up in New Hampshire, and 212 mile an hour winds. They actually have the house that at the top of the mountain. It has chains, big thick chains that go over the roof and are anchored in the ground so that the little used to be a little post office doesn't blow over. And I know, isn't that crazy? But we always pick something like that to the highest peak in whatever state. And but Machu Picchu, I think, would be the next out of the country. Oh my gosh,
how tall is that?
I don't even know the height.
Oh my gosh. Well,
I haven't paid attention to the details.
There you go. Exactly. I don't care. Just point me in the right direction and I'll start walking.
I just want to go on a fun trip. Give me your airplane ticket. I'm ready.
Let me know when I get to the top. That's exactly.
Dave, I love what you do. And I think your podcast has a message. Each one has a unique message based on your guests. And you do a wonderful job with that. And thank you so much for having me today.
Oh my gosh, I'm honored to be hanging out with somebody that's climbed way higher than I. Now you're gonna have to challenge me because I'm 100% on my competitives. So I might on my disc. So I may have to figure this out. So thank you again.
You're on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, today, we'll do this. So thank you so much. And again, if you're listening, please just jump out of your comfort zone, go into nature. Reach out to Pam, find somebody that you can confide with, to find ways to, rather than just get up in the morning and go about your day. Like she said, go above the clouds. Don't be stuck on the buoy, go above the clouds. So thank you again for hanging out, and I can't wait to learn more.
Thanks, Dave. Have a good day.